I was laying on my couch this morning and I realized there is a light that I have just never used since I've lived here. I think I probably turned it on when I first got here as I was checking all the light switches, but it's over the bar area, which is to my right. And I was like, let me turn it on. Let's see what's up. I like it. It's soft, not too fluorescent like the kitchen lights. So this might be my new evening living room time light. Today's video slash podcast might be a little pulp like. I have a few different things that have been going through my mind. And also in this particular moment, I woke up from a little bit of a nap and feel like mush. But that leads me into my first thing. Something I heard this week that I wanted to share is we all love the metaphor of the caterpillar to butterfly. And one of the ways I've heard it in recent years is like when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis or creates the chrysalis, where it then becomes the butterfly, it like completely turns to mush. So if you're in that transitional, transformative, transmutational phase, you might be a little mushy. The astrologer that I listen to has said that quite a few times in the last few years too, the Tauruses, which I am. And yes, I've definitely had periods of mushiness, and then I come out and I'm like, oh, I think it's like this. And then I go back into mushiness, and oh, I think it's like this. The new layer is when that chrysalis is formed and that mush is happening, the caterpillar cells attack the butterfly cells. So only the ones where the butterfly cells went out come to life, come out of the chrysalis as something new. And yeah, I feel like that is, I don't, in my current incarnation in life right now, I don't feel like I'm under attack, but I definitely feel the old and the new kind of duking it out. Like, all right, we could stay where we've been, or we could keep going, into something new. And I feel like that's why this practice and process rose up that I'm doing now that I've been sharing with you, where I'm like challenging these pieces of my identity because I'm like, the new thing, the butterfly, I believe it'll win, but it doesn't quite know what it is yet. And the old thing knows really well. It has a lot of experience, has a lot of practice being what it's been. So the new thing's still trying to figure out what it is. But I thought that was interesting. Take that metaphor, share it with your friends. And I also was just looking at my some of my notes over this time, some of my recordings, and then like the AI note taker thing, and was just remembering that creation is the natural movement of energy. I've talked about the five elements. So they are ether, which is pure potential, pure possibility, moving into air, which is like ideas and options and information and the mental realm, into fire, which is the action realm, the doing, the motivation, the focus, the clarity, the water, the resource realm. That's where things get fed and nurtured by you, by others. And then earth, which is where things actually come into being. This can happen very quickly. This can take a while, depends on what it is and how much resistance is in the way. But that's the natural involution of energy. And these places that we get stuck, and the work I love to do with people is help unwind or open up or reveal what has been stuck so that energy can just naturally move. And then we can just stand back and let it do its thing. But I love that because the creation itself doesn't need to be forced. We don't have to make it happen. We get to be, I'm also thinking about Big Magic, if you've ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. She talks about the genius, and the genius used to be considered not that the person was called a genius, but we would be visited by geniuses. And I feel this all the time. And like, so ideas like come into us. And if we are a good vessel for those ideas, then they come into being through us. If not, then they visit somebody else and that other person creates them. And there's no right or wrong in it. It's not like you're bad if you weren't a good vessel. It might just be not a good moment for you. Might not be a totally great match. But like all of the potential, all the consciousness that is the origin of creation, like is just putting out options, putting out possibilities, putting out realities, putting out, you know, different buses they want to see come into being or new caterpillars or new whatever. Um, and so if it lands in you and you are a good vessel for it, it can come into being. And then it will, usually have some place that there's some friction in you that inhibits its incarnation. And when you relieve that friction, then it can come all the way through, spirit to form. So creation wants to happen. It wants to happen through you, through me, through us. And we get to be stewards of creation. And again, I just like the lightness of it. It's not, I have to manifest this thing. I have to make this happen. I have to dig up my worst shadow. Like sometimes that is, part of the thing, but it is much more about allowing. It is much more about finding right action. It is much more about, I mean, I see in my mind, like just kind of like let the energy swirl down and like, if you were to swirl, is there somewhere in you that your swirl has a hitch in it and you can just kind of mess with that hitch a little bit and like shimmy it out and be like, keep going. Let's do this. Let's fucking do this. Right? So also in this past week, it's been my first week of my identity challenge, my self-created identity challenge. And I've had so many ideas of what I want to do next. But I've also noticed something in myself that I want to share. When in the past, this is why tracking is your best friend, because when you get into the rhythm of like noticing yourself, noticing your patterns, things start to reveal themselves that you've probably been doing a long time and didn't know it. And now you're like, oh, well, shit, I see that. And I see how that's a limitation or it creates a limitation that creates friction. I have enjoyed, like, if there's like an aim, like an ultimate aim in mind, let's say fasting. Like, I feel really good when I fast. And if I want to build toward longer fasts, again, this is just an example, then let's say this week I'll do one thing. Next week I'll add a layer. The next week I'll add a layer. The next week I'll add a layer. What happens is, let's say the first week, because I'm actually planning to do this week. So let's say the first week I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have an 8 hour eating window. That's it. And before that, I was already like not really eating a lot of carbohydrates at night and like really, recognizing that I sleep better when I don't do certain things right, right before bed. So I was already kind of doing that. And I'm like, okay, let me do this 8 hour eating window. And then what happens during that week is because I've made a rule where I'm like, let me just do this 8 hour eating window. I'll stick to that rule, but then I'll revert to other bad habits that I had before. Or other things will spontaneously rise up that I'm like, oh, I also want to do this or this or this. But then I stop myself because I'm like, well, no, I'm only doing this week. So I'll like either revert to other things that aren't part of that rule that were not creating optimal, or I'll stop myself from doing new things that would be even more optimal, that are like a spontaneous inspiration from the action I took. So that is something I recognized this week. So my mission to myself, my body related mission to myself this week was to do 5 sun salutations a day. Now I have done some variation of sun salutations, 5 of them every day. Sometimes it's just been inhale, exhale. Most days I've gone through like the full physical process, but what has happened is doing those sun salutations, and I talked more about them in my last video, so go check it out. But I'm recognizing like what I want in this, which is the point, right? That's why I'm fucking doing it. Um, and what I want is deeper breath. I want to feel my diaphragm opening. I want to feel like, I love the time that I sit with myself. So even when I go into stillness and I'm just breathing. So those are the things that have naturally come out of doing sun salutations. And I was on a hike yesterday and I was like, oh yeah, it was a short one. My dog is not, we could do like little hikes, but she does get tired and hot very quickly because she's older. So I think we just did a mile, but it was, a little bit of a hill, up and down, more of a hill than I've been doing. And, I felt my breath going and I was like, oh, good. Like, let me like clock a solid 15 minutes of breathing. And then I was like, well, no, I need to wait till next week. And I'm like, what? Like, no, what if that's important to me, like that is something that's coming out of doing the sun salutations is I have more awareness of my breath. I have greater desire for breath. I feel like it helps me feel my body more. It helps me feel my digestion more. I've been doing, when I sit down to do the yoga, I've been doing some twists that, so basically I do legs up the wall and then I slide my feet down and then I roll my knees to one side, keeping the opposite shoulder down. And that particular twist with my knees like pretty far into my body really stretches out my diaphragm. Like I feel the fascia pulling, like torquing in opposite directions. And I need that. Like, that's the place where I've have the most compression, I would say, in my body. And so my 5 sun salutations a day has like opened up this energy that's actually desire. It's actually desire. Like sun salutations was a gateway, and this is the outcome. Like this is what I want for myself. Like I want to be breathing. I want this open place in my body. I want to like get out of breath a little bit each day. I want to feel my muscles, but I want to feel my breath most of all. I want to feel the version of it that is exertion through like hiking or whatever. And I want to feel the version of it that's in stillness through pranayama. And so the idea that I would be like, well, no, let me put this off, because this is what I started to say to myself. Let me put this off until next week, and that'll be my like thing next week. And then I saw myself saying that to myself, and I'm like, Shannon, that is not the point. And that is where these things become a limitation. Like I did something intentional and then something organic came out of it. And I like that organic thing, again, is the fucking point. That's why I'm doing it. What's interesting here? What does me making myself do this thing, what does that make me want for myself? Does that make me want something more of that? Does that make me want the opposite of that? I talked about shaving my head and realizing I felt like it kind of took me out of like physical attractiveness running for a minute, and I didn't like that. And I'm like, oh, maybe I actually want to feel physically attractive to somebody else's gaze. So, heard myself tell myself to delay my organic response to my practice. And then I said, oh no, that's ridiculous. That's not what we want here. And so I've been breathing intentionally and twisting and pranayamaing and hiking and a little bit of my step aerobics again, which I had been doing and then kind of like tapered off a little bit. So, discovered a new place where I have historically created limitation and recognize it. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Because the breathing is way more interesting than the five sun salutations, right? It just is. I'm like, oh yeah, this is how I want to feel. Fuck yes. Fuck yes. Give it to me. So I haven't done them yet today. I'm getting myself all amped up about it. Okay, checking my notes here. All right. So my last piece is just what do I want to do for this coming week? Today is Saturday. So my second week of this, my identity challenge is tomorrow. Quick refresh. I'm doing one thing related to my identity that challenges my identity and one thing related to my body. So sometimes it's going to be like one thing that I do once, like shaving my head was the one thing. And it did take about a week for it to feel natural, where I feel like, oh, I feel like I can just own this now. It took about a week. I was pretty uncomfortable until yesterday, actually. And then yesterday I was like, oh yeah, it's just my hair. And again, I still need to do like one more buzz so it's all the same length because my hair follicles are everywhere. And I'm doing it myself, so I'm not getting like I still have a little bit of evening out to do. But then I'm gonna see where I want to go from there. Um, so for this week, I actually have three things. One is I am a dancer. And I kept thinking about the word wild. And when I see myself being wild, it's dancing. And that I'm not a classically trained dancer. I can barely partner dance for the life of me. I have done like bits and pieces of dances in my life. Like I went to a regular hip hop class for a while. I did pole dancing for a couple of years. Um, but I feel most myself when I am dancing. So, my challenge to myself this coming week is to dance. And I'm going to, instead of 7 days, I'm going to say 5. That feels very reasonable and doable. But my challenge to myself is to do some different kind of dancing each of those 5 days. And some of them have to be out of the house. Like some of them I'm going to give myself the option to do on YouTube. Some days I work a long day, blah, 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 whatever. But I have to do some out of the house. I'm not going to put a number on that, but that's going to be part of the challenge. And I already have some in mind that I know that I want to do and can do with my schedule. So, 5 days next week, dancing, all different kinds of dancing, right? Yep. Okay. Now, that is an identity that I want for myself again that I mean, I still consider myself that. I just haven't been doing it. Um, I thought of this yesterday when I was walking, the identity challenge that I want to give myself. So I have my abdomen, my belly is large. It's large and round. And while I don't hide it, I definitely, mm, I don't know, try to make it less obvious, I guess. And I was walking around yesterday, walking my dog, and I was like, the expected thing to do is either hide it or get rid of it. And I'm going to challenge my identity challenge is going to be to show my belly sometime next week, probably at a dance class. So I'm not trying to do this like out on the street, but probably at a dance class. I'm going to show my belly. There might just be a couple people in there. It doesn't matter. But it's something I'm always like, if I'm in a class where clothes are flying around, I'm like pulling at my whatever. And I'm like, just gonna show my belly. That's my like ego challenge. Challenge to my ego. The dancing isn't a challenge to my ego. It's a challenge to just like get myself to fucking do it because I love it so much. Step into the things I love. But my ego challenge is to show my belly. So I'm gonna let myself do that. And then the body one, I mean, dancing could also be considered body, but the body one, because I know I do feel better with fasting, I am going to start 8-hour fasting window. Again, 5 days a week. That's my first layer of getting back into fasting. So I'm not usually a breakfast person, but if I eat breakfast, that means I stop eating earlier. If I eat a little bit later in the day, that means I eat a little bit later in the day. So I'll work that out day by day, what makes sense. But 8-hour eating window, 5 days next week. So 5 days of dancing, 5 days of 8-hour eating. They don't have to be the same 5 days. And then I'm going to show my belly at least once. I'm going to expose the most vulnerable part of myself. And I also have this idea that a big part of this identity challenge might be about being seen more. It might be about being seen more. So that's what I have for you. Is there something that you identify with that you haven't been doing? If so, do it this week. Is there a vulnerable part of yourself that you don't ever show anybody that you'd be willing to expose this week? Legally, of course. Is there something that you feel good when you do that you haven't been doing that you could start to move toward this week? Share in the comments. I want to know. Tell me. Tell me. Okay, bye.